today we are reading. We are reading from Alone, Growing Up in Alexandria. And as promised, we are reading from chapter 8. And we are now transitioning nice and easy into my entrepreneurial journey. And the part I'm going to read is not quite the entrepreneurial journey, but it is the foundation. It is really about me as a teenager. The parts that I'm going to read will cover the label that was younger than 16. And it will give you, I mean, I was just so smiling as I was reading it myself, preparing for this video. And I'm like, oh my God. So I've actually always been this person. I've always been kind of offside-ish. I've always came through the back door-ish. I've never truly followed the rules. And, you pay for that. It costs you because not being part of what society expects of you, following particular rules, you pay a very big price for it. And I'll get to it when I talk about being an entrepreneur, when I get into the nitty-gritties of being an entrepreneur, of a Black woman as an entrepreneur here in South Africa. And not only that, but just the whole landscape of being an entrepreneur who is Black in South Africa. It's this reading from this point onwards is going to introduce you to why is it that it is just so hard for us to be entrepreneurs as Black people. And I know what I'm talking about, a different generation. I am of a different generation. I know millennials are slightly different, but there's a lot that is similar. And I think there's a lot that I can impart that you can look back and like, oh, okay, so I'm not dumb. I'm not stupid. It's not me. It is how the system is set up. So going forward, we're going to get into that, and we're going to go deep into my own personal journey, the mistakes I made, because we also make mistakes. And the mistakes we make are not mistakes that we don't know what we don't know. So they're very rookie mistakes. You'll get to learn how I started my first business, and it was a big boom. And then also the fall, it was also a big crash, and all because of basic rookie mistake, all because of not having had an entrepreneurial angle, of not having had that generation of merchants or generation of entrepreneurs in your life. So you are a first generation entrepreneur. We always talk about, excuse me, we always talk about first generation university goer, first generation academic person, or first generation matriculant even, guys. This is South Africa. This happens. You still get families where no one has had a matric in their family, or there's only one person who's had a matric last year 2024. So it's the reality of our plight as Black people. But before we get into the depth of the entrepreneurial journey, because that's going to be the remainder of me reading from my book, this one, and obviously the second one, because the second one, Alone, From Hustling to Healing. And the more I do this, the more I'm reading, the more I actually think I need to change that subtitle. I think I want to change it to something else, but we'll get there when we get there. Because From Hustling to Healing is almost misleading. Because when I read the book, when I go through it, as I'm preparing for this, I realize that it is really just about my entrepreneurial journey and the entrepreneurial landscape of South Africa. The healing aspect is quite small, and it's towards the end. And it is a healing in both ways, in that on the one hand, I deepened on my own healing journey, but also I pivoted from hardcore business, hardcore entrepreneurship to, the work that I do today of teaching, of healing, of authoring in the country. And, so I will change that subtitle to something a bit more appropriate. Now, let me begin reading. We are reading from chapter 8. And the title of chapter 8 is Lebo, the Entrepreneur. I'm wearing these glasses today. Glasses. And it will cover my early days, and I'm not sure where I'm going to end. And as usual, I will read, and if I feel like I need to reflect and give some commentary, I will do that. But I think I've given a bit of background and a bit of grounding foundation of where we are starting and where we are going. Okay, cool. Chapter 8, Lebo the Entrepreneur. From a young age, I have always been a hungry child. I had a deep hunger for knowledge, success, and power. By the way, I was very surprised that I wrote this. And in hindsight, it's actually quite true. It's actually quite true. I had a deep hunger for knowledge, success, and power. I have always behaved as someone older than my actual age, or my actual years. At 14, I started a youth club in our community. I was gathering children from the neighborhood. We would dance, we would sing, we'd do some sketches, drama, and all sorts of activities like they did at the main youth centers. You see what I mean? We had Alexandra, my God, my Alex, before it became Gomor. Alexandra had a lot of youth centers. The two main ones that I was part of at some point is Tucson, got 12. Tucson is anything, guys. Please tell me. I know there are people from Alex who are subscribing. Hi, guys. Hello, hello, hello. Tucson, and then go 80. There was Tabi Song. I know Tabi Song is turned into a rehab center, I think, for, correct me if I'm wrong, guys. And then there's now a museum, go 60 and all that. But Alex had always had these youth centers or youth places where we would go. For ballet, I did ballet. For karate, I also did karate. For cooking, I did cooking. For piano, I did piano. And you'll see why I'm laughing as I say this. You'll understand why I'm laughing. And but I would see that, I would see what they do in the big youth centers, and I would want to recreate it in my neighborhood because not everybody had access to youth centers, and not every parent wanted their children to go there because of one the reason or the other. Okay. At school, I got involved in everything. So that's why I was laughing when I was saying, yeah. At school, I got involved in everything. I played in the netball squad and participated in running, debating, and public speaking teams. I was part of the public speaking. That makes sense, doesn't it? I was also quite the entertainer. I once sang a Tracy Chapman song, Behind the Wall, during an interval of a tough debating session. Remember back in the days, the debating would be two teams and one, obviously debating is two teams, but the topics would be, is a pen mightier than a sword? And then that the other side would have to argue whether the pen is mightier than the sword and all that. I mean, those are the days. I don't know if you guys, young people at schools, still have debating teams and speech contests and all that. During debating intervals, the norm was that either an amateur stand-up comedian or a school choir would entertain to pass the time, that whole 15-minute time. My singing, and singing a solo for that matter, took everybody by surprise. It was so unexpected to have someone sing solo during intervals, especially a Tracy Chapman song. Those were the days of R&B, rhythm and blues. Brenda Fassy's music, Yvonne Chaka Chaka, and Rebecca Malope. Guys, if you don't know that Mama Rebecca Malope was once not a gospel singer, she started in pop, in South African pop, you are too young. Rebecca Malope was not always the gospel singer. There's a song of hers that I once sang also in one of these gatherings, No, I'm not going to sing it now because, yeah, it's just going to take my trail of thought out. Tracy Chapman had a profound impact on my life. Every day after school, I would play my cassette tapes, much to the irritation of my sister and my mother. I loved all the songs in her first album. My favorite was Deep in My Heart. You know that song? Deep in My Heart. Bum, bum, ba-dum, da-dum. Deep in my heart. Dun, dun, da-dum, ba-dum. Look at me losing control. I used to love it. Was on repeat. Mountain all things, of course. You got a fast car, of course. But the thing is that Tracy, I was 12 years old by that time when Tracy had such an impact on me. I remember because it was 1988 when she blew up, in the world, and I caught on her vibe. Little did I realize that Tracy would go on to influence so much of the way I saw the world because, I wasn't just singing along with the songs. I learned the lyrics, understood the lyrics, especially Mountain of Things, and the revolution, that song, oh my God, that was much later because I think it was the second album. Don't you know, talking about a revolution. Ah, my word. So she influenced me without even knowing that she's influencing me. Later on, when I became a young adult, I had dreadlocks. I had very, very beautiful long dreadlocks for a very long time. And I'm tracing it back to Tracy Chapman. See what I did there? I'm tracing it back to Tracy Chapman. But during that interval, I sang Behind the Wall because it was an a cappella, so I didn't have to add guitar or piano sound. So it was easy to sing, behind the wall, right? Last night I heard the screaming. Yeah, that one. I was then asked to sing whenever there was an event at school or a debating team or anything. I was becoming popular. I was sometimes even called Tracy. I remember for a long time, some people in the streets, people who were not even called Minerva, because I was at Minerva High before I went to Mitzvah. This high school, Minerva, even people from Relugile, people from Seiko would have heard of me and they thought I was Tracy. There was this one boy who was sure for Albiso like I Tracy, and obviously, was trying to be all fresh with me. And he called me Tracy for a very, very long time. And so for me, success meant being admired and liked by everybody and having some form of influence, which clearly I was having, particularly in the community with those young children. And this is why then falling pregnant, back to the earlier chapters, was such a blow to the community. I was determined to be successful, one way or the other. I was not a very talented singer, so that part of my life died a natural death. I did discover, however, that I was more of an entrepreneur. To be continued. This is my story, and I cannot wait to hear yours.